Okay, guys. Okay, so I want you all to open up your ears and to have your ears more open than what you've had ever before, because I am ready to show you the most amazing way of facing the Dutch. D4, F5, and in my last video that I did about this, when I was telling you a simple way of playing against the Dutch, I was like, you can go knight c3, you know, get your pieces out, da-da-da, and it's a perfectly way of playing against the Dutch. But it's not the stuff that I like to play against the Dutch, because I like to give away stuff, and I like gambits, and I like going crazy in chess, and that's when, that's why I don't play that normal stuff. I play the Staunton Gambit. So, instead of going knight c3 to prepare for e4, and doing all of those kind of things, the Staunton Gambit is when you say, you know what, I don't have time to prepare for e4, I'm gonna go e4 immediately. This is the Staunton Gambit, everybody. If black does not take your pawn on e4, then they've already messed up. So if they chicken out and they're like, oh, I don't know what you're doing, I'm gonna go d6 or something, or I'm gonna go, you know, e6 or whatever, then you can already put on a big smile on your face, because you've already achieved something awesome, which is that you've gotten the center. If they go like d6, this is just really not, anything good. I mean, even just something like this would leave the light squares of black very, 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 very weak. So this is definitely not something that you want to do. You know, if this bishop would go to d7 or something, you have queen h5 and, you know, you have a checkmate. So that's pretty awesome. Not that they would do that, but, you know, the light squares are very weak. That's basically what I want to say with that. So let's just go ahead and look at the actual gambit. F takes e4. Now, the thing that you do as white is that you go knight c3 and you threaten this pawn, okay? You threaten this pawn and you ask black, how are you going to defend this pawn? Now, black can defend this pawn in only two ways. Either by going knight f6 or by going d5. If they go d5, it's a complete disaster for black, and you're already going to get a huge opening advantage. And you would be surprised at how many 2,000 players have played this move against me in classical chess. Guys, many 2,000, 2,100 players have played this move in classical chess. This move just immediately loses a pawn after queen h5. This is a little trick. So after queen h5 check, this just becomes a horrible position for black, because they need to go g6. They need to go g6. You know, stopping this check, and then you can go ahead and just go queen takes d5, and in this position, I mean, this pawn is gone, so, you know, you're getting this pawn. It's equal pawns, but you'll probably win this pawn as well. For instance, let's say that they would take on d5, this would just make matters worse, then you would be getting knight takes d5, and now, you're threatening this pawn. It's really hard to see how they can defend this pawn. If knight a6, then you just take it and then take here. If they go king d7 or whatever, you just go bishop f4 and attack this pawn again. And how do they defend it? Well, they don't. They're losing an exchange, probably. So, yeah, this is fantastic for white, basically. So, this is fantastic, okay? Let's say that after g6 and queen takes d5, they would go for something else. Let's say that they would go for, like, I don't really know, knight f6. This could be another option that they could go for. Well, then I would just simply take the queens, not complicate matters more. And then after that, I would just go knight e2 to defend this pawn. And at some point, simply go bishop g5 to then try to take this pawn. It's really hard to see how black is going to defend this pawn. You could also just go knight g3 and then attack this pawn again. It's really hard to see how black is going to, like, truly defend this pawn forever. Black will at some point lose this pawn, and you're just going to enter a game where you're going to be a pawn up. This pawn is very weak because it's isolated, and you might even be in an endgame 2 pawns up at some point. So this is really nice. Is this an actual gambit? It is an actual gambit. It is an actual gambit, and you'll see why. But this is if black messes up. So this is if black goes d5 instead of 3 knight f6. And this is, you know, this is the best move. This is what they should do. So, now they're defending this pawn. All right, so they're saying, you know what, I don't want you to take my pawn, I'm defending the pawn, etc. You gotta be annoying when you play a gambit. If you're not annoying when you're playing a gambit, you're playing a gambit wrong. Okay, so what you do here is that you go bishop g5 and you attack this knight, and you're threatening to first take this knight and then take this pawn. All right, so this is just what you do. You go bishop g5 and you attack this knight and you're threatening to take here. Now black, this is the moment where black can go for a lot of different moves. And in most moves, you will be, you know, a pawn down because it's a gambit. So in this position, there are lots of different moves, and I'm going to be covering every single one of them. There is G6, all right? There is C6. This is probably the main move, C6. There is E6, which is a very common move. There is Knight C6, which you'll see that I've faced a lot of times in my games if you think about it. This is the move that I face the most when I'm playing this gambit. And there is D5. And I'm going to start with D5 because, you know, this is very similar to what I was saying before. D5 is just a complete disaster again. Because just like before, the only thing that you do is that you first take on F6. And after bishop takes F6, E takes F6, Queen H5 check. And G6, you're going to have the same thing as before. It's going to be very similar to what we're looking at before, you see? So it's the same mistake. It's always a mistake to go D5 in those positions. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah. And here, once again, if let's say that, now it's even worse because now this pawn is not protected. So let's say that, you know, they would go, I don't know, bishop G7 or something. Then you could just take on E4 with check, and that's, you know, an extra pawn they're going to be getting. And then you will be probably they'll go king F7 or something, and then you'll just castle queenside and not blunder, you know, your queen or anything like that. So that is what you do in a position like that. Let's say that they would go queen takes D5. Then this is even like kind of worse than before because you're threatening both this pawn and this pawn. So you're threatening two pawns, and black can't castle exactly. You're threatening two pawns at the same time. Let's say they would go king D8. Then you can just take on F6, and you're threatening to take another pawn as well. If bishop G7, knight E4. If they go rook E8, there's nothing to fear because there's F3 and there's no pawn that can eliminate your knight. If they would take on D4, then you could just castle queenside and you'd be winning this piece, right? So because of C5, you just have C3. So this is just not possible. Okay, let's go ahead and go for another fun line. Let's see if they go G6. This is another really fun line, and this is a very typical move. You'd be surprised about how many people play this. And when I showed the Staunton Gambit to 5-up in for PogChamps 4, his opponent actually played G6. Ludwig played G6. This was the line that Ludwig played. So yeah, this was all preparation that we did against Ludwig, and it was pretty awesome. You know, 5-up won that game, so that was really cool. So let's go ahead and see what happens then. So after G6, my absolute favorite move to counter this setup right now is to go H4. And you'll see that in many of the lines that I show you, you're gonna castle queenside. H4 is my favorite move in this line. I think it's just a really, really, really cool move. And it's, you know, if your opponent messes up, it's very easy to win in just a few moves. And here, the idea is basically this. If they go bishop G7, which is the most natural move in this position, it's just a very natural move to go for that. And the move that I would say 80% of people that are below 2300 rating would go for, you go H5, and this is actually very uncomfortable to play as black. In this position, if they take on H5 with either piece, they're basically lost. It's going to be a horrible position for them. All right? D5 is probably the best move that they have, either D5 or C6. D5 is probably the best move that they have to protect this pawn, and now you don't have this takes and queen H5 idea. And then what you'll do is that you'll simply go H6, force this bishop to stay on F8, and just play this position with queen D2, castles. You know, I can show you this line a little bit, but at some point you'll want to go F3. You want to probably go F3 now. Let's say that they go C6. And this is just going to be a very nice and comfortable position for you. Probably you'll take here at some point, and then you can just castle queenside and just, you know, get your pieces up. This is just really, 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 really nice. Really, 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 really nice. So this is just a really, you know, comfortable opening. This bishop can't really go anywhere because, you know, it's stuck on F8. And that means that this king can't castle either. So black's pieces are very pushed back into this position. So that is if they don't take. You're probably wondering if they do take, and actually taking it's not really, you know, if they do take, it's not really that awesome. So, let's say that they would go for, what do you want me to go for first? Knight takes or pawn takes? What would you take with, chat? What would you take with? Both are equally bad. Would you take with pawn or with the rook? Okay, or with the knight, I mean. Okay, with the pawn. So if you take with the pawn, this is actually really bad because you have bishop takes f6. And after e-pawn or bishop takes f6, let's say they go e-pawn, it seems to be a bit better. You have queen h5, queen takes h5. If king f8, in this position, you can just go for long castles or bishop c4, threatening checkmate, queen e8. And then in this position, you have queen c5 check. Pretty much the only move is to go d6, and then you take on c7. And this queen is very active. You've already won, or you know, getting your pawn, gotten your pawn back. All of these pawns are very weak, and you have constant checkmate threats. And this king is very unsafe. So this is just a very lost position. It's just a very bad position. I mean, now can I guarantee that you'll all win this position? No, but you know, objectively, this is just a really good position for white. So the queen went to her buffet. Exactly. She's just picking up everything. She's just picking up everything. Exactly. So this is what happens if pawn takes, which was the move you guys thought seemed more natural. Let's say that after h5 they go for knight takes, which is also possible. Then you sacrifice your exchange without fear. You go rook takes h5. And after, I mean, you guys can see the engine does not even recommend taking back this rook. Like, look at the three. Okay, you guys cannot even see, but look at the three first moves that the engine recommends. None of them are taking back the rook. And that is just how horrible this position is. The engine recommends to give up that piece and just keep on going with the game. That is how bad this position is. So I just wanted to show you that for you. Rook takes h5 is the idea here then. And if pawn takes in this position, then the idea is that you go queen takes h5 check, and after king f8 you go bishop c4. This is the idea. And now you cannot go d6 or sorry e6 or anything because, you know, you just take the queen. So in this position, it's very hard to see what they do, what they can do. If they go d5, you just take it. So the only way of stopping this checkmate is to go queen e8. This is the only way to stop this checkmate. And in this position, you go queen h4. And the idea of going queen h4 is that you're threatening this pawn, but more importantly, you're threatening to go queen f4 check. And if, you know, after queen f4 check, it would be a checkmate because this king cannot go anywhere. You would have to go queen f7, and then you just take it. So queen h4 is then the move. So e6 could be a plan. And in this position, I would just recommend to go for in this position I would just recommend to go for d5, just to break the whole, you know, the whole pawn structure over here that you have here. If something like h6, you can actually just go bishop d8, and this looks a little bit complicated, but this is actually just very good for white. Yeah, this is actually just very good for white. So it's actually very interesting. And if they, let's say that they would take here, this would just be a disaster because you could just go bishop takes d5 and have the same threats as you had before. Yeah. So this is actually just very, 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 very interesting. And that is if you go bishop c4 here. You can also go for knight d5. The idea being to take on e7. This is another idea. You can kind of pick and choose what you feel more comfortable with. So bishop c4, one idea, threaten checkmate, and then there's the whole queen e8 thing. If you prefer knight d5, this is another fantastic move in move 9. And the idea is that you're threatening to take on e7, and, you know, the question is kind of how can you stop it? If c6 or whatever, you have bishop takes e7 and you win the queen. So if they go knight c6, which is the only move to prevent this, then you can go bishop takes bishop c4, and now you're just threatening to take on c7 and then just going queen f7 checkmate. If they go queen e8, then you can either, you know, go queen h4 or whatever, or you can just simply go for the exchange. And this might be a little bit of a simpler way of playing this, but I think that the other position might be a little bit better because there's so many checkmate threats and stuff, but here you just end up being an exchange up. So white is just dominating in all of these positions. Okay, so that is this whole g6 line. And once again, I mean, yeah, d5 should be the best move, but I already covered what happens then. So the next move that I'm gonna be showing you is going to be the move e6. This is gonna be the next move that I'm gonna show you, and this is a very common move as well. I've played against this move lots of times. If you guys look at my games, you'll see that this is a move that I've played against a lot. A lot of people play this against me, and this is like just a very common move. It doesn't matter what the engine says, it's a very common move. And what happens then that you can see is that there is this pin. So you open up for this knight becoming pinned, and that looks a little bit counterintuitive, but actually the reason why black would go e6 is because they want to castle as fast as possible. In a lot of these positions, black king can become a little bit weak, as we saw in the last line. So e6 is just a way to just get black's pieces out quickly and then just castle. That is what black wants to do. So in this position, what you do is that you immediately take advantage of the fact that the knight is pinned and you take back the pawn on e4. This is what you do. You go knight takes e4. And in this position, the only move that kind of makes sense is to go bishop e7. If they go bishop b4 check, you just go c3 and you say thank you, because you're going to go c3 anyways later. So you just want a tempo. So that's just not a good move. So bishop e7 is what they need to go for, basically, in this position. And after bishop e7, feels a little bit counterintuitive to think about the fact that you wanna actually give away your bishop pair here. So after actually bishop e7, the move that I'm recommending is just to take on f6. That is the move that I'm gonna be recommending. And if bishop takes f6, which is, the move that everybody will go for, because pawn takes f6 is a disaster due to queen h5 check, and your king can castle and the queen is up and everything is just, it's just a disaster. This is not going to happen. You should be very happy if that happens. Nobody's going to go for that. So bishop takes f6 is the move, and then I recommend you just go for c3, and here the idea is very clear. You just castle. You go knight f3, you get your pieces out, knight c6, you go for bishop d3, you just get your pieces out. That's everything you want to do. You just want to, find a nice setup for your pieces. And at some point, you're going to go queen c2 or queen d2, kind of depending on the position. And you're going to castle. Here, they go h6 because you were threatening to take, and then take on h7. You're going to castle queenside, bishop g7, and you're just going to bring your rook in. And this is going to be the position that you kind of want to remember. This can be, one idea. Another idea can actually also be to go h4, rook g1, g4, g5. So it kind of depends on how you want to play this. But if you want to play this in a very safe way, this is just, this is just a position that you wanna play. This is just the position that you want to play, kind of. So this is just a setup. It's actually very simple. There's not too much going on. It's not like that you're losing or anything, but you just have a very comfortable position, and you're gonna be having a pretty, cool attacking way. If they go d5 early on, then you take here, you get your bishop out, and then you're going to be playing against this bishop. And the reason why you wait for them going d5 is because then this bishop is actually going to be bad. Let's say they wouldn't go d5 and they go b6, bishop b7 or whatever, then this bishop could actually be a pretty good piece, and it's just going to be a very different position than, the piece being blocked by its own pawn. So that is why you kind of wait to see what black does. All right, so we've seen that what happens if 4 e6. We've looked now at 4 d5, disastrous move. 4 g6, not bad move, but leads to really cool positions for us. And 4 e6, which is, a very decent way for black to play against this. But, we have our plans. So bishop g5, the next move that I'm going to be showing you is knight c6. And this is probably the move that I don't like playing against the most, because it just leads to kind of positions. No, it's not like you're worse. It's just that it's not as fun, It's not as fun as the other things, to be honest. But it's okay. It's okay. We fight for all of these things. Is knight c6 good for black? Knight c6 is a good move for black, yeah. But yeah, it's a move that you need to know this opening for to play, and it's, you know, it's okay. You don't get a bad opening for white. It's just that, you know, it's not as fun as the other ones because you're not winning from the opening. But that's the only thing. So after knight c6, what you want to do is that, you know, the idea of knight c6 is basically that you're getting a piece out, you're kind of putting some pressure on this pawn, and you're kind of waiting, you're not moving any pawn, you're kind of seeing, you know, waiting for white to decide what happens now, basically. And in this position, what you do is that you go d5 as white. Yeah. So, wow, and I looked and sounded just like Pia there. Did I actually? Yeah, so here you go, d5, and you kick the knight away. So if the knight goes to b4, then this is a disaster because you go a3. And if the knight goes to a, you know, the knight can't go anywhere apart from a6. And then, you know, you just play out this game. So now you might actually want to go knight h3 to get your pieces out, or I would say knight e2 is better. Knight e2, knight g3, and this knight is just out of play pretty much. So this is just not good. So the move that everybody or that most people would play unless they're messing up is that they will go knight e5 basically. And in this position, what I typically play is that I go queen d4. This is a move that I typically play, and this is, you know, a perfectly good move. So queen d4, you're kicking away the knight, and in this position, there are two moves that could be good. There's knight f7, which is probably the best move, and d6. If d6, I would just recommend just castling queenside, and if they go c5 or whatever, then you just go queen e3, and you're going to be getting this pawn back, and then you just kind of play this position from there. You're not going to get any position where you're, you know, a lot better, but it's going to be an okay position where it's equal material, and there are some holes for black, like this hole, for instance. This looks pretty good. Queen b6 or something, and, you know, you just keep on playing with your game. You might go knight f3 to just exchange the pieces, etc., etc. And this is just kind of comfortable for white. Black always has issues with castling kingside in all of these lines because the bishop is not out yet, so black will typically also castle queenside in all of these positions. So it's not a very close position. It's an open position where it's, you know, equal material, but white has a lot of play here. Let's go ahead and go back. So we're looking right now at 4 knight c6. We're looking right now at 4 knight c6, d5, knight e5, and we're looking at after queen d4 to you know, going d6. You know, that's what we're looking at. But knight c7 is the move that most people, or sorry, knight f7 is the move that most people will play in this position. This is like one of the most typical moves. Knight f7, just getting the knight out of, you know, all the issues that they have over there. So in this position, everybody, my favorite move in this position is, and you need to be very careful because in classical chess, I have actually forgotten about this bishop a few times. Guys, a few times I forgot about this bishop. I've just left it there. Yeah, I've just left it there. So, yeah, don't do that. Don't forget about your bishop. I was about to suggest long castles. Yeah, it's so easy to forget about your bishop because you've been so focused on like castling and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, don't forget about your bishop hanging here after knight f7. It's also because it's a backwards move, so it's like kind of, you don't really see it a lot of times. You guys don't know how many times I've lost that bishop. But anyways, in this position, I recommend going h4. And why do I like h4? Because if they take over here, then you're going to get a really comfortable position. You're threatening this knight, and you're also like opening up your rook. So you can see that you're basically winning. Let's say, yeah, this knight cannot even go anywhere. The only place that this knight can go to is over here. But then you can just go, queen e4. And if they go for something random, you can go for rook takes h7. And after it takes, you have a checkmate. So, h4, exactly. So h4 is kind of also a theme in these lines. So, yeah, exactly, makes sense. The knight is hardly ever in that square. Exactly, yeah. So that's, you know, that's how the game could go. That's, you know, kind of how a game could go. If your opponent messes up, you're playing against somebody that doesn't know what they're doing and they're just kind of chilling, you know. So this could be a way that they go for. And honestly, at lower levels, taking on g5 doesn't even seem like such a weird move, because you're constantly taught that, you know, bishops are better than knights. So, you know, definitely don't think that this is something that nobody would play against you. This is, you know, this is definitely a possible move here, even though it's not a good one. So yeah, what happens if they go h6 in this position? Well, the issue of always going h6 is that the light squares are going to be very weak. So in this position, you just take over here. If they ever take with the g pawn, it's going to be very bad, because they're never even going to be able to go g6. It's going to be really weakening the light squares. So you go pawn takes. And in this position, I would probably go castles, just because I want to take this pawn with the queen, typically. Let's say they would go f5, g4 in this position is a very strong move. If they take, you're going to be taking here with check and then taking this one, and you're going to be having all of the light squares. Let's say something like this happens, you'll be able to bring your bishop up. This would be fantastic. And if they go for, I don't know, something else, bishop d6 or whatever, you just take this pawn and it's fantastic. So g4 is actually a very beautiful idea here. Yeah, very beautiful idea if they go f5, but it's also a nice idea to first castle before you take here, because if you take here now with the queen, there's queen e7, and it's just going to be a pretty equal position, because you're going to exchange your queens. You want to have your queens there if you're going to be attacking the king, like you're going to be when these squares are so weak. So that's why you want to castle queenside first. Yeah. So yeah, so once again, castles to f5, let's say e6. Well, that makes sense, but then you're going to have bishop b5 check, and if they go bishop over here, then you can just take on f5, because then you cannot take back because of the pin. And if they go c6, then you can just, you know, go ahead and take over here, and it's going to be a disaster. And if they go c6 now, you just take, and you win the rook. So, that is the idea. Yeah, so you can never protect the f5 pawn. And if you go g6, well, then you just take the rook, so that's not possible. Yeah, so those are some of the ideas that we have there. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. In Gambit, it seems to be good to keep the queen on the board. Yes, because you're giving away material. So typically, the only thing that's worth it if if you're giving away material is to be able to checkmate your opponent's king, or, you know, attack that king, and that you need a queen for that. So that's why it's important to keep your queen when you play Gambits, typically. So, h4. So I was showing you h6. I showed you knight takes here. Typically, probably the best moves in these probably the best moves in this position are to go c6 or e5. c6 is probably the main move here, and in this position I would just recommend castling queenside, just to add some extra protection on this pawn. So then if pawn takes, you're going to have knight takes d5, and after knight takes d5, queen takes d5. This is fine. You're going to be getting this pawn back. Yes, does black have the center? Yes, but white has a lot of more, you know, piece activity. You're going to be getting your pieces out a lot easier, and it's going to be very hard for this king to castle. So it's kind of hard to see, you know, how black can develop their pieces. It's going to take a long time for them to develop. So it's actually kind of uncomfortable for black to play this. So that is you know, that is one way. So you typically don't want to take here after c6. So one of the main moves after c6 is simply to just go like queen b6 to exchange the queens, because once again, I was saying that when you play a gambit, you want to exchange queens. And in this position, I would just recommend not exchanging queens, like I always said. And the way that you Staunton makes you angry, yeah. And the way that you go ahead and refute that is, can you guys see it actually? Can anybody in chat see how you can not exchange queens in a good way? Can you guys see it? Exactly, yes, because if you go bishop takes f6, exactly, there you go. If bishop takes f6, black cannot take on d4, because then you just, you know, take the queen back with the bishop. So, you know, you've won a piece. So, what you do after, like, probably they should take with the g pawn now, because if they take with the e pawn, you're going to take her with check. Let's say that they would go for this. Now you can take this one with check, and that would just be, like, super amazing, because after this, you have d6 as well, and you're winning this bishop. So probably they need to, in this position, take with the g pawn, but it's going to be the same thing. You're going to go for queen takes e4 anyways, and here probably the only scary move that they might have is queen takes f2. And this, once again, this is not a position where you're going to be like a lot better, but you're going to go knight f3, and maybe there will be bishop h6, king b1, and in a position like this, everything they kind of want to do is that you just want to get your pieces out. So if they would castle, this would be amazing because you have bishop d3 and you're going to be like checkmating them. But they might have queen e3 or something to exchange queens. And yeah, I would still recommend to not exchange queens. I would still go like queen a4 or something, or queen c4 to not exchange queens. But this is not like that much, you know, better for white. But it's a position that's hard to play for black. And you'll probably go bishop d3 relatively soon. This king, you know, cannot really castle, and it's gonna take a while for this bishop to get out and for this king to castle this way, basically. Yeah, okay. So that is that line. Let's see, what else can they do here? Let's say that they would go d6 in this position instead of taking or going queen b6. Let's say that they would go d6 in this position. Then I just simply like, once again, to take and then go queen takes e4. You're getting your pawn back before anything bad happens. And after bishop g7, I actually really like just getting the knight out. You get your knight out, you're going to try to get control of d square. This is like where your pieces want to go. And if something like castles, for instance, then you can start going g4 and you can start actually like really playing against the king side. So this is actually like really fun to play, and you can just go ahead and just go a bit crazy. You'll have some bishop d3 at some point. You're going g4 also to stop f5. So you're threatening to go bishop d3 at some point. You're gonna start pushing, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So this is just a kind of position that's just very comfortable. I mean, there's not really much more to say about that. If black messes up here, then, you know, it's gonna be very easy to checkmate. Said they would go for knight h6. Let's say they would go for knight h6, for instance. Then you can just go bishop h3 to defend the pawn. And then you can just go ahead and bring the rook in and just start pushing, you know? That is just kind of the way that you want to do this. And this is, you know, this is already move 13, so this is pretty awesome. Lots of moves of theory, but this is just really comfortable. So those are kind of the things that might happen after c6, and this is with the knight 4 knight c6 line. Remember, go here, boom, here. This is if you go c6 now. But another move that's very common is to go e5. There are no winning moves for black, Johnny. There are no winning moves for black. I'm showing you, you know, I'm showing you just kind of how this line goes. But yeah, I'm showing you all lines. I'm showing you the stuff that's good for black too, but there's nothing that's winning for black. But yeah, so e5 is a move that is very common. I think that this is one of the main moves here. I think that is one of the absolute main moves in this position instead of c6. c6 might be a little bit more uncommon than e5, although I've faced c6 even more. So, in this position, I would recommend to just keep the queen, and you want to have the queen in a place where this pawn is still, you know, under attack. So I like going with the move queen a4. You're also at this point, you're also, you know, stopping, you're also kind of stopping black from pushing the d pawn, and you're threatening at some point to maybe go knight takes e4. And this is like in no ways like a lot better for white, but this is just a position. What if you en passant it? If you en passant it, the issue is that you're going to be exchanging these queens, and like I said before, you don't want to exchange queens, because let's say that you en passant it, I mean, it's okay. It's okay. It's just that I just don't really like the fact that you're exchanging queens. I feel like there's not really like a lot that you can get from this position, but this is also like a simple way of playing. You could just go for something like this, I guess, and, you know, go for takes and then knight here, but it's not like you're getting any advantage whatsoever for white. So if you want to try to go a little bit for the advantage, I would recommend the other line, but this is like also pretty okay. So let's say you would go a6 or something to go b5. Then I just like going long castles, and it's the same idea as always. You go long castles and you're trying to pick this pawn up. So b5 here is not possible because you just have bishop takes b5. Pawn takes, you take the rook. See, if this, you're just going to be able to take this one, boom, and then boom. So that would just not be good at all. So that would just not, yeah, it's like a little puzzle rush. Puzzle rush idea. Little puzzle rush idea, chat. Little puzzle rush idea. So you don't really want to do that. So let's say castles. Let's say that they would go like, I don't know, h6 to kick this bishop away. Then you'll just take this, and then you'll probably go knight takes e4 to put some extra pressure over here. And probably they might go f5 or something, but then you can just go knight g3. And once again, this is in no ways like a lot better for white. This is like okay for, really okay for black, but it's a position where your king is going to be safer. This king is still in the center of the board, and black doesn't have amazing development, and this knight is kind of awkward. So I actually practically like this for white. Let's see something like queen f6. Then you'll probably just go bishop d3, putting some extra pressure over here. Knight d6 maybe, and then you can perhaps go for c4 to then go c5. Point man, I would say like 1600, yeah, something like that. So this is just kind of the ideas. There's lots of ideas here, and I don't want to get too much into it because it's already moved 14. Like there's lots of crazy stuff here. Rook b8 perhaps. There's lots of crazy stuff here. Maybe queen c2. You have to go putting pressure over here. But this is a you know, position that you guys could study a bit more if you would want to play this. So that is kind of this position. This is definitely, there's counterplay for both sides, but this is a position that you really need to know as black to play. And, you know, most people will not know it. And, you know, if they do know it, it's fine. It's not like you have a bad position. You have a decent position. You have a good position. You know, it's equal, and that's totally fine. So that is pretty awesome. So, also I'm super excited. I'm getting lasagna soon. So, guys, this was 4 knight c6. This is the line that I've been showing you. We have now gone through 4 d5, 4 g6, 4 e6, and 4 knight c6. So, guys, the last one that I'm going to show you is 4 c6. And this is a pretty common move as well. It is. Okay, so 4 c6. This is going to be the last line that I'm going to show you with this. And the idea of going c6 is that you want to go d5, but as you know, after d5, you have bishop takes knight, and after pawn takes, you have queen h5 check, and then you're going to be, you know, losing this pawn. So that is why c6 comes in handy, because then you're protecting the pawn on d5. That is the idea with that, basically. That is the idea with that. So, yeah. So after c6, this is the line that's the true Gambit line, okay? Everybody, this is the true Gambit line. This is the line where you'll be a pawn down, but you'll have a lot of play for that. So this is the actual line you'll be a pawn down and everything. You're not getting that pawn back, and that is just the way it is, you know? But it's okay. There are really cool positions that arise from it. So f3 is the move here, and this is once again very thematic with this opening. You've seen that I've played f3 a lot of times, and why you play f3 is because a lot of times you don't really care about getting this pawn back if you get a lot of, you know, piece activity. So the idea of going f3 is very simply that if you take well, d5 is the best move, but if you take on f3, the idea is that after knight takes f3, you're gonna have a lot of piece activity as white. So let's say that they go d6. You will go bishop c4, okay? So they go queen b6, you'll go castles, and this king is extremely weak right now. You have lots of pieces looking towards f7. Let's say they go bishop g4, you go h3, you kick the bishop away. Let's say the bishop goes to h3, you just go queen d2. And you're gonna be bringing all your pieces up, and it's very hard to see how black is gonna castle. Black basically needs to castle queenside to be able to castle in this game. And bishop e6 now, for instance, is a very nice idea for white. Are those about, I mean, these are you know, normal moves for black. I mean, yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, these are at first glance the first engine moves that they say for black. We can look at other moves as well, but this is just some of the ideas. We can go back. So yeah. So bishop e6, if they would castle here, for instance, in this position, then you would just be able to start attacking on the queen side. And you can see that your attack is going to be a lot faster than what black's attack is going to be. And you have all of your pieces kind of bringing black's pieces down. So this is really nice for white, as you can see. So this is just very comfortable. I mean, a4, I don't know, maybe they'll go a5 to stop b4. But then you can go b4 anyways and not care about this, because if queen takes b4, you're gonna be bringing a rook in. The queen is trapped. If they go pawn takes, then you can just go a5, and after something like queen a6, you can just go knight a4 and bring a knight up over here. Say that they would go for something like this. You can just take on b4. I mean, this is just incredibly strong here. So you guys, yeah. So you guys can kind of see like what yeah, some of the ideas are here. But this is definitely just like a very nice position. This is how it can go wrong for black. Obviously, you don't need to go for this, but long castles is probably a mistake. But you can see here how it can go wrong pretty quickly for black. Let's say they would go knight e5. You cannot take with the pawn because of the pin, and you're threatening to take on f3. The issue with this move, though, is that because our bishop is on e6, this king will not be able to castle. So, let's say that, yeah, so what can you do? You can probably just take on e5, pawn takes. And in this position, just go bishop e3, and now you're just defending this pawn with the bishop, and you're threatening to take here, and then, you know, the queen is going to be hanging. So, whoops. Let's say, yeah, so I don't know if they go something like this, but this would just be really fantastic. Like, look at all of black's pieces. They're all cramped back into like the first, like the 8th rank. Like, just look at it. It's just like white is always so much more active. So yeah, that is basically that. I don't know, guys. I think I've showed you everything. That's everything I have to show you. Boom. Staunton Gambit in the chess.com database 92 has a 100% win rate. Yay. 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 Well, guys, I think that this is everything that I have to show you. How long did this take? 1.5 hours. Okay, that's better than the other. No, almost 2 hours. Okay, but that's you know, still a little bit better than the other times. I hope that this has been a bit more clear than my other Theory Thursdays. We're gonna go ahead and, you know, we're gonna go ahead and play some games that you guys can see how this can unfold in an actual game. But will it be saved? It will be saved, Johnny, and it'll also be going up to YouTube. So you guys will be able to see, you know, a refined version on YouTube.